done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Continues with Pauline Waroi, mentor and coach. We're talking about GBV, the workplace. City, you had many questions.
Well, there are many, but it rotates just around two questions. What is it that you can say are the fundamentals of a person who is a violator? This violator, this person who goes out of their way to brutalize individuals and wants to be at the helm of those who give the worst examples of power dynamics in relationships or in a workplace. I mean, what goes into making this person what they are? What are the influences that bring around a person like this?
I think without going to the medical perspective, because that's not my experience, number one, I'll say socialization. What have you grown up believing in? What have you grown up seeing? What are the cultural norms that you have actually experienced in your journey? What are your deficiencies as a human being in terms of gaining access to control? That you really want to control. And if you cannot be able to influence like a leader, you almost certainly move to the next level where now you want to control using force. If you grew up in a house where everyone was being battered to conform, then you believe that's the only way. Even at work, you believe unless I make you or I hit you to control. Like, let's also start addressing it from an African perspective. We were beaten. The mwiko, the slippers, anything that was nearby. We were beaten to conform, to comply. So as you grow, you go to school, you are beaten again to comply. You are even conditioned by the bell. If you did not adhere to that bell, you are beaten. So where will you change? Where do you expect this twist to come from? Where people now start talking. It is now we see children being put in naughty corner. So, you could not have been controlled by naughty corner. It was unheard of. So you can now actually see. There were no corners. So psychologically, this person is conditioned to actually beat, to be able to get results. And here you are, you're made a manager. You have no training whatsoever. You've been told, this must be done. We want these results. And then you start getting absolute forms of power. You're given absolute forms of power without control. So you now lord it over other people. And that is where now you use, as long as there are no controls, then you start using that force and that it keeps graduating. Even in marriage, you never be beaten the first day. It starts with a very nice love story. But the red flags are there. It is the shouting. It is the way the person is treating other people. So it is the same thing with employment. The red flags are there. And then one day, you're beaten once, nothing happens. Then you're beaten the second time. I remember going to a salon and asking the women there, even the men, have you been violated at work or at home? Because you come in as a whole being. And all the women had been hit at one point or the other. I did this again where we were doing an executive training, and we were sitting men and women, and we were doing group work, and we were answering this question so that we'd see whether there's anything that would be different. And the question was, have you ever been sexually, what are the top 4 things that affect people at work? And for the women, our number 1, we had all experienced sexual harassment. And it is not necessarily the violent one. It is somebody touching you, hitting your back as you move, or, just lurid comments coming through. So these people are driven into that control from the onset of where they have come up. The socialization, the culture, the people they have been with, and what others have been doing. We learn.
Would we say that some of these things, since we talk about them and we are highlighting them, that we see a reduction in these very adverse behaviors?
I wouldn't call it a reduction. I would call it an awareness, because it is still happening.
So there is increased awareness.
Yes.
But despite increased awareness,
Yes.
there is still high prevalence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is not necessarily created by lack of awareness. Sometimes, like I've said, it's the socialization. It's the people who are in their 40s, 50s now, who are the managers, senior managers. They have come from that culture of being beaten and taking control using force. Number two, it is, can I get away with it? I'm aware, yes. But can I get away with it? What are the consequences? Then you see, we are now moving not just from the female male perspective. Homosexuality, sodomy is happening in our schools. There's a lot of lesbianism in our schools, but we are shy to talk about it. I sit on various boards of schools, high schools, and that is one of the major challenges that we have. So when these people come out, a prefect will take advantage. Where are you going to get to talk? How are you going to talk about it? And you can even now be more violated by the people around the center of the person with power. Who are you going to talk to?
You know, the picture that is painted is that we seem to be a nation or a society of individuals who've been brutalized so often that we simply put up with it. In fact, worst case scenario, we've accepted it as normal.
Yes.
Because beyond the workplace and beyond the families we come from, I would point my fingers directly at the manner in which we prosecute our politics.
Yes.
Because the politics has outcomes, and those outcomes help brutalize the individual, us as individuals, right in our psyche, we, without us realizing that this is what it's doing to us. Because how do you get to a point where we all accept that wrong is actually right? How do we all accept that it is actually wrong to point out wrong?
Fear. Fear of the unknown. Acceptance, because this is what happens. You know, a wrong done so many times becomes really truth in people's mind, like perception.
Yeah.
It really has become the fact that if I find the neighbor being beaten and she's not nice to me, I'm just like, okay. That is society, isn't it? If a girl is drunk in a bar and she throws a tantrum and she's beaten, what do we say as a society? She's a nuisance. Let her be taught. That is the society that we are. But here we are saying it is not right. It is something that we have to address and keep talking to our children, making them aware. Are we too far gone in it ourselves? How do we salvage? And that is why it is even the way we define ourselves, who we are. We are who we are. I am not, my first introduction is not, I am a mother, I am a woman. It is where I work, what I do, what I drive. So can you see that whole societal, we have misconceptions about being a human being, what it means to be a human being. And that is why if somebody is maybe not economically empowered and they are beaten, we say, those guys live like that, isn't it? But if somebody is beaten in Runda, it's a big thing. Yes. So you can actually now start to see where we are coming from and then things that we need to unearth to start healing.
If I look at the way the younger generations are responding, it is completely contrary to the acquiescence that the older generation have of accepting the status quo and the norm.
Yes.
They are not just saying no, they are acting and defying what they consider not to be right. And one could argue that the biggest hindrance to this forward movement are their parents and that generation.
Yes, I agree. I'll ask you a question also. Have you ever seen a therapist?
Have I ever seen a therapist?
Yes. Have you ever gone to a therapist for counseling?
Yes, I have.
Yes. But how many people this age actually even accept to go to therapist?
Ni mambo gani hiyo sasa?
It's a sign of weakness, isn't it? Yes. Or how damaged are you to actually, that is the misconception. And that's why I talked about stigma. How damaged are you that you're actually going to see a therapist? But the newer generation, number one, I will put it this way. They are more exposed. And globally. They have stopped operating from the village. And when I mean a village, I mean that central point. You see, like now, my generation, sometimes somebody would only operate within a 30 kilometers radius. So the only thing you know is these cultures. But today, the younger generation, there's media. They're being sensitized. There is internet. They are on X. They are commenting. They have been given the freedom to speak at home. So they will be able to tackle these issues a bit more openly. Then the shame, and I'm really, really for this word, the shame is being peeled away into a reality that it is not right. They are aware of their rights, even from the books they read. I think even from class 3. They are talking about my rights as a child. What rights would we talk about? So you can actually see there is progression in terms of the way things are. Though now we have gone into other influences like drugs, because some of the things happening today when it comes to GBV is not just about, the normal perspective. As we used to be hit, so you pass, guys cheer or they cheer, one touches you. But today you are seeing it becoming a bit more gross also because of this level of exposure and the kind of influences that they are exposed to. So I think for me, the take is that different generations, different exposures, different ways of dealing with things, and it's a bit more open society. Yeah.
But then with this open society, one sees even more bizarre things happening. And I'm saying that even the generation that are advocating very vocally and very strongly for change, even from among themselves, we are seeing violations that an older generation would say they had never witnessed.
Yes, absolutely. But the first thing I also think, and I look at it, the very bizarre things, and that's why I'm saying the kind of things the younger generation are consuming were not exposed to the societies we lived in. So that is number one. The kind of drugs, alcohol, whatever it is that is happening. This global exposure also has its side effects. It has its pros and cons. And the cons are this. They are also watching, we have watched, even on TV, on live, you have watched people committing suicide.
Yeah.
They have learned how to kill. It is there. It's on the internet. Dark internet, you see a lot of things. So the kind of exposure that is also happening, the kind of, even when it comes to sexuality, the kind of, when we say the greatest platform of I'm doing nothing, I'm watching nothing, porn, the kind of things that they are watching.
That's what it's called. Huh?
Yes.
Nothing.
Yeah. Every time anybody is caught watching it, they ask, what are you watching? What do they say?
Nothing.
I'm watching nothing. So that's the greatest platform of watching nothing. The kind of experiences, animals, anything is there. So you can now start to understand now the cons of this level of exposure. Whether it's at the workplace, whether it's at home, and these are the things that you are seeing. We are seeing a lot of things happening. The Airbnbs. What is happening in those, the orgies. We are ashamed to say these things, but they're happening. How then do we now start bringing it back to perspective? Where are the parents? Let me start from home. It is us. We are busy. We are too busy, we don't even know our children. If you are told your child, I always say by 12, if you've not caught your child or know that they might have come across something like porn, you are too busy. And it is not necessarily in your home. It is a child with an older sibling who will come and bring these things to a small phone will be brought to class. these are the things that are happening, and these are now the roots of these animalistic tendencies that we're tending to see. Yeah.
Back to the workplace.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about GBV,
Yeah.
because we bring in the word gender,
Yeah.
so you'd think that the violence is being meted by somebody of the opposite gender.
Yes.
What about when it's actually coming from a person of the same gender? Say, female boss, female junior, male boss, male junior. And there's a lot of, like you said, it's either physical or a lot of emotional violence. Do we still consider that GBV?
Yes. Because
But
you're
would it
being...
be taken up and by HR, by anybody else, as, this is a case of GBV?
I think today we would be very pretentious to not agree to the fact, or to actually accept the fact that the LGBTQ whole story is real. It is illegal in the country by the laws of the land, but it is happening, and it is rife. We watch it. Anybody who has gone out there knows it's happening. People point fingers and say, so even in the workplace, it is happening. There are people, there are ladies who will coerce other ladies, and sometimes unknowingly, this person will tell you, let's go for a drink. If a gentleman tells you, let's go for a drink, then what is happening? We've seen cases where you go from work, after work, what happens? A drink, you're drugged, and then you don't even remember what happened to you. That is number one. The other one is where you are lured into a normal relationship like it would be between male and female. But this is male and male. And you are told, I will promote you. So you go through that, whatever the consequences are, against your wish, but because you have no other option. And I say no other option in quotes, because perhaps you do, but you are choosing to go through the lighter path or the better path. These things are happening and they are real. And this is where now the HR departments need to come in and say, we need to address whatever is happening now. People are being coerced, male to male, female to female. This is a reality at the workplace. And you go to the workplace and don't even think about, just like I said, the corporate. I'm using the salon because there's a lot of diversity around salons. There's a lot of diversity. Let's go into the tea picking region where there are so many women. The manager is overall. We have seen cases. What are the consequences thereafter? What is HR doing? Can I go to court? How long will it take me? Even though the police then are sensitized, and I go and I report, and everything is done. When I go to hospital because I've been violated, what will the nurse tell me? The first thing you'll be asked, even for a woman, how did you get yourself into this situation? You are the victim, but you truly are even the victim of the circumstances happening to you.
Is it possible to eliminate it, or at least start to significantly reduce the GBV in the workplace?
Yes, it is. And I always say, leadership, I think it starts from a leadership perspective, a stewardship, where we say, in an organization, if we say this should not happen, and there are consequences, we see big heads rolling, big heads being prosecuted. Do you think it will continue? Is it because then it's the leaders sometimes who are doing it that these things have no consequences? That is where we need to start from. Yeah.
So should organizations maybe establish committees of juniors to deal with such issues?
Yes. It is very important to have, beyond the normal structures that we have. You can have cross-functional teams that actually are looking at GBV at the workplace. And also work on things that are realistic, because then when we talk about GBV at the workplace, and then sometimes it's also malice from the junior to the senior, and everything becomes null and void. And that is the story that is moved. It is a story that now comes and says, you see, we told you these stories are not true. So let us also establish processes that are fact-based, so that we can actually be able to eliminate this.
Pauline, thank you for joining us today. Pauline Warore, she is a corporate mentor and coach. We've been talking about GBV at the workplace as we continue marking 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. Join us again tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. Have a lovely day. It's what time?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.